I'm excited today just to have Adrian Smude as our guest. Adrian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited just to hear what you are going to share yourself, and to even hear what your personal feelings are based off of your experiences as far as what some of the better ways to go. But I'm just going to give a quick version of what I know of your story, and I could be completely wrong, and feel free to correct me if I am. But you were able to free yourself in a relatively short period of time. Once you developed a vision of what it was you wanted and you wanted for your life, you came up with a plan, you executed that plan, and through cash flow, you were able to free your wife from having to do what she was doing, and free yourself to really start living and experiencing life. And you caught on really early that cash flow was the key. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here as our guest. You've pursued cash flow from a number of different angles, and we want to hear from you today, based off of your experiences, what you feel is one of the best ways or quickest ways to generating cash flow that would free people. So did I do justice with sharing, your beginnings and your story?
Yeah, I'll add to that. If I would have a little more blind, faithfully followed my coaches, it would have been even faster.
Mm-hmm.
But as we all do, we kind of fight it a little bit, I think, when we first start, and it would have been faster. I know that.
So if you don't mind, can you just tell us a little bit of, where you were, what the situation was when you were first getting started, and what you had to overcome to get to that point of freedom that you were looking for?
So my quick story is I started as a tenant being evicted because I was a terrible tenant. And I had a family member that was a mortgage broker. This is 18 and a half years ago. So he just said, why don't you buy something? And so I signed the piece of paper. You didn't need anything back then to sign for a mortgage. Bought the house, moved my friends in, and I was living for free essentially because my friends were paying the mortgage, and that was pretty cool. So I decided I should do this some more and actually make money. And I had some up and downs. The second house was a short sale, and I was a hobby landlord that I realized now, but back then I thought I was serious. So that went on for, I think, 10 years. And then I got introduced to RIAs, which then I was buying, I would say, more the traditional route with bank financing. And then I was introduced to Lifeonaire. And at that point, I still had shiny object syndrome, where I was a wholesaler, then I was going to become a flipper, and then I was going to buy more rentals. And my coaches made me realize that really all I cared about was cash flow. I don't get that much gratification through the fix and flip process like a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. I don't get tons of adrenaline rush out of the negotiations that a lot of people do. So doing tons of deals isn't for me. Doing the major fix and flips isn't for me. I like the cash flow and helping the people that are going to live in the house. So once they finally got my head wrapped around that, then all I need to focus on is rentals. And because I had that short sale, I became a little cautious, thinking we were at the top probably about 4 years ago. So I've been extremely wrong. But because of that, and listening to the wise investors at different RIAs, they all talked about mobile homes at some point. I said, hey, these people know more than I know because they've been doing it as long as I've been alive. Why don't I at least try them? So I bought a mobile home with land, and the cash flow was probably 2 or 3 times what I was getting out of a single family. And I think I bought 3 more within a month and a half. And I just continued from there because I realized what I really want today is cash flow. That's what I eat off of. That's what we travel off of. Equity is not the long-term play because it wouldn't be the Lifeonaire model, but yeah, you can cash it out and refinance, but that stops at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And that also sounds scary to me to continue to refinance. But cash flow does not stop.
Yes. All right. So you made the decision that, okay, I'm going to focus on cash flow. You went, you bought a mobile home. You found out that it was really good. So are mobile homes the only thing that you do today, or do you still do other stuff?
So we do a tiny bit of wholesaling. Pretty much if we get a lead and it doesn't work for us, we want to help the seller and we want to make a little bit of money off of it. And then we're actually a week and a half ago, we sold our last site-built home, which was also our last bank finance property. That's the first house I ever bought. I got the biggest check I've ever seen in my life. And we're now going to turn that into more cash flow.
That's awesome.
So really, yeah, all we do today is some type of cash flow. If it's notes, if it's mobile homes with land, we do a tiny bit of lending, or we used to do some mobile homes within parks. We haven't refocused on those because from our experience, they've been a little bit more time intensive, and we've been trying to dial back the time intensive properties. But they were great for our growth because they're huge ROIs. They're cheaper to get into. They're great for the growth phase. And we might look at them again at some point, but they just don't fit our personal vision right now.
So well, I'm going to share just a couple of things with you from my own personal experiences. I bought my very first mobile home ever about 2 months ago, and it was in a park. But I've always been a single family home guy. I used to be the guy who, when somebody called me up and said that they had a mobile home, I just said, nope, not interested. And I just wanted single families, and that was it. I just remember my days with Lonnie Scruggs. And, Lonnie was actually a personal friend of mine. We've stayed at his home. He stayed at my home. He showed me his whole empire down there in Chesapeake, Virginia, and, all the stuff that he had. And I was always very, very intrigued by it because of the massive cash flow and the returns that he would get on the stuff that he did. But Lonnie, when he introduced it to me, I was just still so busy as a flipper that it was really not something that I could do. Now, I also recall that Lonnie was telling me about lot rents being $150, $200 a month then, and the parks in Maryland were $475 a month near me 20 years ago. And I thought, no way. I mean, it's just crazy. I'm not getting involved with that. I'm not going to. So I sort of just stayed away from it. But I bought this mobile home now a couple of months ago. But I remembered my time with Lonnie. And I love the idea of the possibility of financing it. I actually chose to just go ahead and flip this one. But what I most remembered, what Lonnie told me, was about how cheap you could buy them. Mm-hmm. And I bought this home for $4,000, remembering Lonnie's numbers and things like that. Hey, you get them for $2,000 to $4,000, you sell it for $12,000, $14,000, take back a note. And so it's just what I did. It wasn't real estate. It was a mobile home. It was a wobbly box. And I decided I was going to just try to sell it for cash and, see if somebody came along. If I had to finance it, I would. And I put it out there for $12,500, bought it for $4,000, and I got $13,000 for it 2 days later. Now, the guy who bought it from me for $13,000 was a really cool guy, and he was just so excited, and he was going to be an investor. And so I said to him, I said, well, what are you going to sell it for? If you don't mind me asking, what are you going to sell it for? He said, I'm going to sell it for 32, and I'm taking back a note. And he said, I've done one already. This is going to be my second one, but I'm going to use this to free me from my job. And so I just thought it was really cool. But the big lesson that I learned was you didn't get $32,000 for a used mobile home when Lonnie was doing it, I mean, this home was probably less than $20,000 new when it was sold, but now it was 32,000 in a park and didn't own any of the land. And as I was driving through the park, a for sale sign went up, and we called on that, and they wanted $32,500 for a used mobile home. And it wasn't that nice. And the nice ones, I just saw one in the exact same park for $55,000. So it was an eye opener to me that even mobile homes have actually been going up in value, that it's sort of expected that people are going to be paying more, at least in this market. I don't know how much of this market contributes to it, but I got to meet a guy who is now at the very beginning stages of doing what you did as well. And his goal was to generate the cash flow to free him from his job, and using mobile homes in parks to do so. And he was so excited about it, sharing his numbers with me. So anyway, I can attest from knowing Lonnie and from what this guy said, and now from your experiences, that it is a quick way. Mm-hmm. Now, you're doing other stuff. You're now focusing more on buying mobile homes on land. Mm-hmm. You've got notes. Single family home rentals at all?
No, we just sold the last single family. We're not opposed to them, but I doubt anyone's going to sell me a single family at the numbers that we can buy a mobile with.
Yeah.
So
let's focus on it for a minute, because the purpose of this call is what's best. And if you're not doing single family homes, if we're talking about cash flow and we want cash flow, I think it's pretty safe to say that you would not say single family homes is the best way, to quickly make cash flow.
Exactly. So the reason we sold the house we just did is we looked at our equity, how much we would be netting out for selling it, and how much net rent we were getting. And we were making 5.6% on our equity. So we just decided to sell it because I know I can generate more than 5.6% on my equity, even if I didn't try very hard in the mobile home space. Mm-hmm. So I think going back to what you said of why you never did mobile homes, even knowing Lonnie Scruggs, one of the best ever at it, mm-hmm. is because most investors were scared of them, didn't think they were anything any good, or some people's ego got in the way and didn't want to stand in front of what some would say an old crappy one like I have here, which we do own this one right here. That's in the video. And that's one reason we were able to grow, because no one wanted them. So I just became the go-to guy. I was like, yes, send them to me. But we kind of filled the void in the market. I think the best would be starting with the lot rent properties. Being in Florida, that everyone was just scared about this storm that came through. Lot rent properties are a little more risk than having the land, because if the storm would have taken it out, all you would have been left with is an obligation to pay lot rent, versus I'd be left with some land at least to do something with.
So can you insure them?
Something this old, 60s, 70s? No. I mean, we'll get some insurance that they say covers a fire and a few things. It does not cover a named storm. But to me, that adds more risk. It scares a lot more investors off. And that just means I have to buy it at a better return. And if I buy one or two, it's probably pretty risky. If I have 10 or 20, I'm spreading out my risk, is the way I see it.
So tell us about that one behind you. What's the deal with that?
This one, as you can see, if you can see in the picture, the virtual background, it does not look that nice. This one was with land, and most investors at that time were completely too scared of mobile homes. And this one was even pushing my boundaries of the rehab, but it's not financeable by any bank. So you either need private money, or you need your own cash, or you need seller financing. And this guy was an experienced investor, I found out later, because the title company knew him by name. And he had kind of gotten out of the business. He was thrilled to sell me this for $1,000 down, $100 a month, 0% interest. I mean, he almost cried whenever I gave him that offer, because he was so happy. And I was pretty excited too, because those sounded like amazing terms. Now we had to do a lot of work to it, but I think we spent, I want to say $12,000. I would say doing it more of a Lonnie's style, where we didn't make it pretty. We just make it safe and livable, because it is an older one. And this one we did sell it as a rent to own. So it is turning into a note, and the people are paying, I think, $700 a month. So quick math, it's a good enough return. Easily 20+%. I really haven't done the math on it, but it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And
Bonnie's saying it's good enough. Don't
yeah.
need calculators.
So, and the other piece of it for me is the person that is moving in a property like this, they can't get financed and they don't have the cash. So I am helping fill the void of the market of someone that wants to own their own home. Most of our prospective people, they don't care about the home as much as the 1/4 acre of land that it's on, that they can bring their pigs and chickens and what other animals they want. And they just want their peace and quiet left alone. So this one's down a dirt road, off of a dirt road. So I get some fulfillment of helping that person eventually own something, or if it's just a rental, they have what they want. They have a place to live. They don't have someone, I would say, doing inspections all the time and caring that they have some of these non-traditional pets. I like to be able to help those people out as well as making a great return. So for me, it's a win-win.
So I know you said $700 a month. Did you take a down payment from them?
Yes, I don't remember off the top of my head. I probably took close to $3,000. I usually do somewhere around 3 months rent. I think this one, there was a tree in the back that was rotted, but it was not going to fall in the house. So I like people to have something that they have to do to the property. Mm-hmm. Because then I feel like they're going to be a little more vested and it's theirs. So something simple like that, not replacing windows or a hole in the roof. I like it to be something that they can, skirting is one I love to do. So if it's skirting, I require them to do it, and I'll give them a little discount on the move-in if that's the case.
Well, I have a couple of questions for you, and there's a little bit of a selfish reason why, and you'll find out here shortly. But so is that one that's behind you? Is that the worst one that you've ever bought?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so the $12,000 to make that safe and livable. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming it wasn't safe, it wasn't livable prior to. What did you do to get to that point?
We had to get all new electric. It needed a few windows replaced. The roof actually didn't leak. And if you could zoom in on here, part of the outside wall was just completely exposed. So we had to completely take care of that. The inside really wasn't. The inside looked totally different than the outside. Okay. It looked decent. We did have to do a little bit of plumbing. The electric was the main thing because the owner had started to rewire it himself. So we basically had to go and strip it and redo all the wiring. But the kitchen was fine. The bathroom was fine besides a little bit of plumbing. And they're pretty easy to work on. So I come from the single family site built concrete world, not the wood frame. Mm-hmm. So these are a lot more like wood frame where you just go underneath it, run your piping, and it's easy. Yeah. Not like a concrete foundation.
So what's the biggest renovation that you've ever done to a mobile home? How far have you taken?
Probably, I think we spent close to $20,000 on one a few years ago. We did have a better qualified contractor than we had at this point because we had some contractor issues on this guy. But it had a little bit of everything. It didn't actually have a physical door on it. It had 6 dumpsters of hoarder stuff and drugs that were within it. So we had to do everything. on that property, except for the subfloor and some of the walls. I mean, we had to mitigate all of the walls with the smell, and we used pretty much every product and still put kills and the ozone machine in there because we didn't want to take any risk. But we had to almost remodel the entire property, roof. As long as the roof hasn't been leaking for a long time, they're repairable. If the roof has been leaking a long time on older ones, so when I say older, I mean older than 1980, because older than 1978, they use particle board floors. And once that starts getting wet for a long time, they just melt. And all the inside of the walls, they'll be eaten up by termites. And when you push on the wall a little bit, it feels like you're going to fall through it. It's been leaking for a long time. Mm-hmm. And you've done big rehab, so you know once you start opening up a wall, the cost triples.
Yes.
And on a mobile, it might just collapse because that's what holds the roof up.
So that one that you spent $20,000 on, was that on land that you owned, or was that in a park?
No, it was land that we owned.
Okay. So how many, let's just go back. You started doing them and you're doing them in the park. How many of them did you have to do before you really started experiencing freedom and get to some of the goals that you were looking for?
When we started, we did the whiteboard exercise where we found that we needed, at that moment, $3,000 more to meet our basic needs. And we needed 10 properties on our average of what we were getting per property. Some of them we'd be getting $150, and then some of them were getting closer to $350 a month. So we needed 10 at that moment. And we were doing a decent amount of them. We were using our own cash, but a decent amount of them we were doing more the JV agreement where someone was bringing the money in and getting half of the cash flow. Mm-hmm. And that's the only type of debt I'm comfortable with, because I don't have a payment out when the payment isn't coming in, because that's the scary part for me. And then if there is a balloon on those, but I'm not worried about the balloon because I'm buying at 20% plus ROI. So I feel like at any point I'll be able to find either someone else to replace someone, or I can just bring some of my own cash to it. But the short answer is it took 10 properties at that time. We put the whiteboard up. And honestly, I didn't believe I was going to do that within a year when we started, but I just kept doing it, listened to my coaches, and just kept saying it over and over and over. And, as we got one, we adjusted all the numbers, and we did it within, I think it was technically 13 months.
So 13 months, how much of your own cash did you have to put into it, would you estimate, in that 13 months to get to the point where you are free?
My guess is probably, I know we paid $16,000 for one cash and 10 for another. I don't think I had any more money. I think that was virtually my life savings. So I would say somewhere around $30,000. And we were snowballing the money at that time. So my wife was working. We lived off of her income as an RN, and anything I was producing, we put right back in the business.
Okay. So I want everybody to just hear that real quick. You were only working with about $26,000. You got creative to do other deals, but in a year's time or 13 months time, you picked up enough properties that were generating $3,000 a month. So that the time, the effort you put in, the cash that you invested, you were making more than 100% return on your money that you had invested into it.
Yes. I actually never thought of it all the way that way. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And so beyond the there's every once in a while, there's that fluke of a single family home deal where somebody can pull something like that off, but that tends not to happen in single family homes. But you did that repeatedly with mobile homes. and to get there to accomplish your goal. So this wasn't just a fluke. This wasn't a one-off. This was something that happened repeatedly.
Yeah. And so 2 years ago, we did a 1031 exchange. We sold one of our corner lot, single family houses. I mean, it was arguably nicer than the house we live in. It produced $380 net a month. And we sold that, bought 7 mobile homes with the land, and we went to about $3,200 net a month.
So it took 380 and switched and converted it to 320. That's awesome.
Now we put about 50,000 of our own money in there because we had to do some rehab. So that big rehab I was talking about was part of that. But that's 50,000 on 7 homes.
So 7 homes. Did you buy 7 individual homes on 7 individual lots?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to throw something out there for you right now because, 2 months ago, I bought my first mobile home.
Mm-hmm.
I just put my first little mobile home park under contract.
Nice.
And it is nasty. It is bad. There is a single family home that is 13 years old on the property. It's 2.6 acres. The single family home is rough. It's really rough. The mobile homes, there's 7 of them. 7 of them. They're rough, really rough. I'm buying the whole thing for $150,000. My plan right now, I went there, and again, like I said, I'm using the word rough, and I'm being nice when I say that. I'm going to evict all the tenants immediately. I want every one of them out of there, and then the goal is going to be to just go in there and fix up one of them at a time. And just even now today, I know that those mobile homes fixed up are going to rent for $700 to $900 a month each. And the reason I was curious and asking about what's the most you spent on a renovation and things like that, I'm trying to determine, how much am I going to have to spend on each of these to get them up there. And I'm really thinking about going all out, and I want to get your philosophy on it. Going all out, full-blown renovations, making them really cool, nice, sort of going along almost with the tiny home idea, really nice wood siding or hardy board, and just going literally all out where I can pull in $900 to $1,000 a month rent for each of these homes and capitalize on that whole movement. But the goal is just going to be to really make it a nice place. What are your thoughts about that? Am I going too far with it to do that? Or would you do less and cater to the people who, maybe let them buy the home, but rent the lot from me?
So there's a guy in my market that does very similar to what I do, but he goes all out. He puts granite in them. He does everything phenomenal finishes. We don't have the same customer base, I'll say, that's either going to buy it or that's going to rent it. I think if I planned to keep it all and I did not want to sell the homes, so turn it into a park where we have lot rent, I would definitely, at this stage of my life, I would fix them up all the way. I would probably get a little bit better quality tenant. Like you said, I'd get more money. If it was a few years ago and it was in the growth stage, I wouldn't fix them all up, just simply because of money.
Mm-hmm.
If I plan to sell just the home and keep it as a lot rent, so I own a big parking lot that happens to have a house on it, I don't know. I'd have to really run the numbers of how much it's going to cost me, but I might be leaning towards just getting them livable and in decent shape and not going all the way. So I like the idea.
Would it be completely a numbers game for you? So would you go the route that's going to generate the highest return regardless? Or, and I'll just ask you, does going, say, 12,000 into each of these homes to get them safe and livable versus 35,000 into each of these homes to go all out, the difference Does that 12,000 get me through a few years, or does the 35,000 a longer term outlook that brings in a better tenant who, I don't know. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
So for me, I value my time really, really high. So I want someone in there that's going to consume the least amount of my time. I think one of the theories, and it's where we've been focused more, I want to get a blue collar handyman that's going to fix everything and tell me later, hey, by the way, I replumbed the whole bathroom. And I've had that happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm comfortable with that. Not everyone's comfortable with their tenants or their buyers doing some work. I lean towards that because that's a lot less time required from me. Mm-hmm. And I have found that that person is attracted to something that they can get in and fix themselves. So if it's livable but ugly, the person that wants everything done for them, they tell me no because they don't like the property because it's not done. So I try to set the property up to attract the person that's going to live in it that I want. That's my goal.
I don't know that I don't even know if I had shared with you the numbers yet. Did I tell you what I'm buying it for?
I think you said 150.
Yeah, 150,000. So, I figure if I put 200 into getting everything into tip-top shape and making it really nice, be all in at 350, I have something that's generating $7,000 plus a month. Pretty good return. But what I'm hearing from you is I can do better by putting in less.
Yes, especially depends on where you value how much time you have to deal with it. We haven't owned a park yet, but I heard that the 7-unit is a tricky area because it just doesn't warrant enough money traditionally to hire a manager on site. And traditional property manager may not do as good of a job with it. So I like the idea of owning a big parking lot. In your case, it's not a huge one. The other thing I would factor in there is, do I think that it's in the path of progress in the next 5-10 years that a developer is going to want to buy it and just turn it into a shopping center, a skyscraper or something, or $250,000 houses? If that's the case, I'm not going to want to dump money into it because I'm not going to get that out because they're not going to care about that.
So here's another thought that I had. I've considered, and with the one experience that I had with this one guy, calling him and other investors, some of these are really bad, and saying, I'll give you the mobile home and I'll give you 4 months free lot rent to get it renovated and sold out. But the home's yours for free, and lot rent's going to be $350, $400 a month, and I don't have anything to do with that, with the house or the tenants or anybody.
I love that one, especially if you value your time even more, because then you have close to nothing time-wise in it. You also have to deal with that house that's on it. Mm-hmm. But I like that a lot.
So that's one I've been giving some consideration to. So anyway, I'm intrigued.
Do you have septic and well on the property?
They're all separate electric meters. They all have their own separate septic tank. So there's 7 or 8 septic tanks on that 2.6, which I'm in the process of getting the information from the county to make sure that it's all legal, that everything was done above board, that it's legally zoned for that. That's the only contingency that I really have in there. I felt like I'm buying it cheap enough to where it's a pretty much a no-brainer. I'll make it work one way or another.
Well, the one risk factor there, what age are the homes?
They're old. They're 60s to 80s.
Okay. So one thing to check on there is the setbacks, if that's changed, because I've seen it happen around here where a mobile burns down or someone goes to replace it and the county says, no, that was grandfathered in to how close it can be to the septic, you no longer can place it there. You need a wider space. And now they just lost the amount of units they can have on there. I've seen that happen locally.
So these are, and I think we're going to be pretty good there. They're not that strict here, at least not right now. But the interesting thing, and you mentioned the roofs, and we had a situation here where that's the number one thing that people really need to be looking out for is, how bad is the roof? And because the older ones, when they leak, they actually built, and presumably they got tired of taking care of the roof. They actually built a structure over top of all of the mobile homes with a metal roof that keeps the rain from actually hitting the mobile home.
I love that. That's my favorite property to buy because it's just a roof over. And it's, like you said, it's metal. A lot of times they use the same paneling that they use on a screen porch, or it's very similar to that, but it's also easy to get a hold of, and it lasts a long time.
So they've actually been, when I first saw it, I thought, oh man, they were just cheap. They didn't want to take care of the home. And now after hearing you, I'm like, well, that was a blessing because these homes have probably been protected.
In some counties around here, you don't have to pull a permit for that either. So I think that's one reason sometimes people do it is it's a loophole for the permit that they don't have to, because they're just building something over the structure versus working on the home itself.
Mm-hmm. Let's assume that there's a home here that's so bad that I can't do anything with it. What do you do with that home? Do you just have to pay to have it hauled away, or are people willing to take it for free because there's enough value in whatever they're getting, whether it's scrap or?
With the prices of metal today, I don't see as many people taking them for free unless they're just looking to put it in the woods somewhere. Where I'm at in Central Florida, they are pretty strict about moving them because we have hurricanes. Mm-hmm. So I do agree with them being pretty strict of keeping the quality that they're going to be moved higher. I think it's about $3,000 here just to haul one to the dump. Mm-hmm. We've never done it. That's one reason we rebuilt this one, because if we would have replaced it, and I did have a 1990 for free, I was going to have to get permission from the neighbors to move it in. I was going to have to most likely bring the septic up to code because it's grandfathered in on an older one. But as soon as I put a new one, they're going to make me bring it up, which in that area, I had a good feeling it was going to mean an above ground septic. The well, I'm not sure how close the well to the septic was, so I may have had to move that. The moving costs around me is $5,000. Actually, I heard it just went up since COVID. $5,000 for a single, $10,000 for a double. I hear Florida's more expensive than most states. And then I have all the risk. The one reason I didn't go that route was the guy was moving his mobile from one part of his property to another, having a brand new one put in and then taking his stuff out. Well, during that transition from maybe 35 feet over, they bent the mobile and made it unusable. So there's always a risk when you move it that something's going to happen. They're mobile homes, but they're not mobile. You run a lot of those.
I got one more question for you about another possibility, but then I'd love to have you just share with everyone what a typical deal is that maybe they should be looking for. But I'm considering another mobile home park that's got 18 spaces. Nice, clean park. It's a whole lot cleaner than the other. It's a little bit further out, but there's 18 spaces there. 5 homes in the park right now. There's 13 vacant spaces, which means I'd have to find homes somehow or another, get more homes in there. I could either convert it to an RV park and create just where people come and rent it that way, or literally start finding used homes that I can bring in and get that park filled. Would you consider doing something like that? It's I could buy that one for probably the similar price, somewhere 150 to 170. I could probably buy that for. Would you do that?
As long as I had some type of in writing confirmation from the municipality that they're going to allow me to put mobiles in there. Because I know not all municipalities want mobile home parks being built, which I think is silly because we have an affordable housing problem. But as long as I had it in writing from them, I wouldn't trust just a phone call. I'm just a little more skeptical of changing their mind. But yeah, it is a little difficult to find the used ones to move. We've actually been, I call them bird dogging instead of wholesaling, a decent amount of those this year, but they have gotten more difficult. We have a guy that he's a dealer. He literally buys and sells used ones. And that's not our niche. So we just pass those leads off to him. And he's doing really well with it, but that space is getting crowded too, because there's nothing affordable. And you could even put a sign out, bring your own home, 6 months free lot rent or something like that. And maybe a homeowner is going, or you could say, I'll pay for the move. That's actually how I bought my first one in a park, is I knew I had a backup that another park was looking for units. And I didn't end up selling it to them. Ended up doing the traditional Alani deal, but I had that backup because I had a park hungry to buy. And they ended up filling 23 spaces by buying all the units in a park that was becoming a skyscraper. So the park was sold for just land value. They were giving the units away because they saved money by not having to dump them. And that park bought them all.
Awesome. All right. So let's just create a scenario. You've got nothing. All your homes, you don't own them today. You're just getting started out. You move to a new town and you want to generate cash flow as quickly as you can so that you and your wife can be free and live life, and you're just getting started out. What would you do?
If I have no money, I would be looking in the parks and looking for something that someone is going to sell me at a really good price, like projected on paper over 50% ROI. And I say it that way because on the $4,000 deal that you were just talking about, if you have a $500 oops, that's a pretty big percentage difference. And I would go to my friends and say, hey, who has $4,000? I'll give you the first however many years of payments or the first however many years of rent. And I would sacrifice the first part, or maybe sacrifice 75% or half. I would find a deal that worked for both of us so that the person bringing all the money would get their money back pretty fast and then make money, and I would have no money in it. And I would start with the smaller ones to build the trust, the relationship. They're easier to find. I believe they are, because a lot of people don't want to waste their time, quote unquote, with a $4,000 deal. And then I would start looking at some bigger ones, but you can move pretty fast. I've watched a lot of people move pretty fast within parks, get 2 or 3 parks that they work within and just door knock or tell the managers, tell everyone. I had a park offer me 3 of them for free once. I wasn't willing to do the type of rehab, if it was even rehabable, that these needed. They were probably the scariest properties I've ever been in, but I'm sure someone ended up taking them and fixing them up. They were going to give free and 3 months free lot rent. Like that was a deal for someone. And at the beginning of my investing, I probably would have taken it, but I had moved on to, I don't want the risk of mold in my lungs.
So so you would definitely start in parks and you would start smaller. Would you rent those out or would you sell them on a note?
I like selling them on the note because it's less time and work. And when we're starting out, that's usually we're putting all of our time in. And then when something breaks over here, we literally stop what we're doing and shift over. So that's why I would sell them on notes or do some type of rent to own with it, just to mitigate the time. We have some now that have been paying off, And do I wish I hadn't because I would make a lot more money? Yes. I still believe it was the right move to make at that time because I got my time back.
Mm-hmm.
And also some of the properties we still do some rent on today because if the property is going to be very heavy maintenance, I just want to give it to someone else regardless.
So in a park, sell it with a note. Have you ever done a rental in a park, just a pure rental?
Yes, because I had it advertised as a rent to own, but some people came to me, said, hey, we're working at a warehouse, building out the warehouse for the next 8 months. We only need 8 months. We're willing to pay more. I thought I was going to rent it for $700 and they offered $1,000 and it got paid directly from corporate. And I didn't think very long at all and said, yes, I will do that.
More cash flow. All right. On your notes, have you had anybody default?
Yes.
And so what does that look like?
Very luckily for me, I meet them and take the keys back, or sometimes they said, keys are on the counter, I'll be out by Saturday. I have had to go as far as door knocking the guy's mom, and she got him in shape to give me the keys. But we have never had to go the legal process through it. I believe most people want to do the right thing, and they just get in a hard time and they're either embarrassed or, I usually tell people, hey, we'll forgive everything. We won't come after you if you leave it broom swept clean. And I have had someone that was the problem of why they were avoiding me to give me the keys back. And once I figured that out, I said, just give it to us. We'll take care of this stuff. So I'm very fortunate, and hopefully never in the future, knock on wood, I have to go to court. I do everything to prevent that, but I have my paperwork in case I do.
So financially, when you have to take it back, does it work out for you?
Oh, yeah. And I tell people when we're signing the paperwork, I tell them, if you stop making your payments or you move out or I have to kick you out, I'm going to make a lot more money. But I would prefer to never walk in here again, because that means you made all your payments and you made this your home and you paid us off. I'm very straightforward with the people. We are going to make a lot more money. And we have one, we don't have it anymore. We just sold it a few months ago, but we sold it 6 times, I believe. It was not a very good property. So we attracted not very good tenants or buyers. But it served the time that we needed. It served us very well for that time.
Was that one in a park or on its own land?
It was in a park. And the only reason we sold it for cash is the park emailed me maybe on the 6th or 7th of the month and said, rules have changed. By the end of the month, you cannot have these in your name unless you're living in them. No more rentals. And I have no idea if I could have fought that, but I didn't want to fight it because that's not where I like to put my energy. So we just put them up for sale as a cash price and we sold them.
So going back, you said, if I'm starting new, fresh, I have no money, I'm in a new area, I'm going to go into the parks, I'm going to do my deals there. What kind of money can somebody expect, over the course of a year's time? Let's say that they're able to pull off one a month using the strategy. What kind of freedom could they see from a cash flow perspective in a year's time?
So I like to, if I'm going to buy it in the park, and let's just say lot rent's $400, the very minimum I want rent to be is $800. I want to at least double it because I'm going to expect at some point I'm going to have a vacancy. And if it's a month, the pure math on that. So it depends. We still have parks around us that are $250, $300 a month. There's not many of those. And they still will rent for $700, $800 a month. We also have parks that are $1,000 a month. I would start in the lower income, but not a war zone, drug area, and start there. So I'd have to look at the rents, but one thing that somebody did put in the chat, and I get a little off topic before I forget, you do want to make sure you talk to the park manager to make sure that they allow rentals. because not all parks allow it. And I've seen more and more, as I just kind of mentioned, parks are not allowing rentals anymore. But it depends on how much money they need. You know, if they did the Lifeonaire model where they just slowly take their debts and monthly payments down and bring this up at the same time, I don't see why one a month someone couldn't be free in a year. I'd be very picky on the park today. If I was going to do one, I would only be doing them in mom and pop parks, because I also want to be building that relationship so that after a few years, I can be popping my head in every few months saying, hey, Steve, you know, I would love to own a park like this one day. And then when you get tired of it one day, I've been making the payments faithfully every month. Hopefully, I'm one of the first people you talk to before you put it on the market. And hopefully you trust me for owner financing. I know people have bought that way. I love that idea. We haven't done specific marketing for that, but I call it a lotto ticket, you know, out there that maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't.
What is the price point of a used home in a park that people should be, you know, what range should they be looking at?
So the park I was just talking about that is no longer allowing rentals. I had a guy messaging me on Facebook yesterday. He's willing to sell his for $4,000. I know I can very easily sell it for $10,000. He's living in it, so I know unless the roof is actively leaking, I know I can easily sell it for $10,000. That lot rent is $450, I believe, a month, and I don't know how many bedrooms and baths it is, but it'll probably rent for $750, $800 a month. And I had to tell him no, because, you know, I'm not going to try to go around the park's back with any of that. And something you do also want to be aware of is most likely every January that rent is going up. If it's managed anywhere, any semi-responsibly, the lot rent's going up. If it's not going up, it's probably a mom and pop that is too scared to run off their tenants. Yeah. So that's a good one to get in to try to buy the park.
So I think that the discussion clearly went toward, hey, the best, quickest way is going to be mobile homes over single family homes. If you're just getting started out, looking in parks is better. If you do have some means, you're probably going to suggest that mobile homes on land is the better way to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all we look at today, because I want to own the dirt. I do believe I get a better quality tenant or buyer when you own the dirt. You know, we've dealt with two parks. One park was on its way up quality wise, and our buyer in there, they were phenomenal. And I have had tenants that are with a home and land that have not been phenomenal. So it's not all the way around, but if I can stereotype a little bit and generalize, I will get a better quality tenant when you own the land, because there's a little more privacy. And that's what I want, because I want less phone calls, so I can get my time back.
So I'm going to share this. There was one guy who wanted to buy my mobile home from me. Now, I had to sign a 1-year lease when I bought it. And then, you know, so it was important that whoever came in signed the lease to relieve me of the lease. Well, this guy, he wanted to just pull it out. And he was coming in, I'm a cash investor. And he didn't quite come out and tell me he was going to stick me with the lease, but I, you know, talked to him enough and I figured out what he was trying to do. But it also made me think, I mean, I've seen some lots around $19,000, which is not easy to find, but they're in areas where a single family mobile home would work. To buy the lot for 19, to put in a well and septic, pay to move the home there, to buy the home from me. You know, I was figuring he'd probably be all in for around maybe 50,000. Those are selling for 90 to 120 today on land, a house on land. So I figured that was his strategy, was to buy this thing, put it out, get it on land, Do you see opportunities with that? Or if you were all in at something for 50, would you just want to hold on to it and keep it for the cash flow?
Two things there. One, most banks around here, if the home has been moved, they will not finance it. So you would have to hold some type of note. I have heard rumors that there's a community bank that will finance it if it's been moved. I haven't actually talked to anyone that will do that. Because I like to be a little lazier and spend less of my time, what I would do with that, and I have done in the past and still look for, is I would go to a mobile home dealer that sells brand new ones. I have a buddy at one of them now. I just send him addresses. They look through their database because they have hundreds of people that are pre-approved, just waiting to find land. He tells me, hey, I've got 4 people in that area, and they're willing to spend around $40,000 for land. And then my job is to get it under contract and close on it cheaper than that. And then hope that they will actually close and buy me out. We've done that. And what happens in that scenario is the person gets a loan for everything, for the home, the well, the septic, the tree clearing, the land, all of it. And I'm the very first person that gets cashed out. So as soon as they sign that mortgage, I get my check, and then they start going through the process. So if there is an issue with putting a well in or clearing some trees or moving down, it's not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that because I'm not going to make as much money, but I like to be a little lazier because I can do that easier from traveling.
That's the wholesaler in me. I get it. I like to do as little as I can possibly do. And so what I'm hearing also then is you don't want to be in the business of moving homes. I heard something that I didn't know, that once a home, it can be moved probably the first time when it's new, but after that, a bank is not going to finance a home that's been moved a second time. And so that is one of the reasons why there's opportunities for investors, because bank financing is out of the window.
Yep. And it doesn't mean you can't make money on it because you can sell it on terms yourself. Mm-hmm. But again, a lot of people are scared of that because of Dodd-Frank. But as long as you do it right, there's always a legal way to do everything. It's more paperwork.
Well, Adrian, I want to, we're really at the end of our time here, but I want to thank you for coming and sharing your experiences with us. It's, just the time that I got to spend with Lonnie, I was so intrigued with the things that he would share with me and the kind of cash flow that he had. And I will just tell you, he was a guy who was a pretty simple guy. He didn't have, here's the deal. People had no clue how much money Lonnie Scruggs was making from those little mobile homes. The amount of checks that were coming in the neighborhood of $200 to $300 a month was staggering. And over a period of time of continuing to do that, that was at a time when so many of the real estate investors that were very well known, who I had come across, they were all still borrowing money. People have been investing for 15 to 20 years. It was always a head scratcher for me. Like, you've been making so much money for so long. Why do you still borrow money? Why do you need somebody else's money? And after all this time, Lonnie was lending to so many people, and he made it $200 at a time. And it was the amount of money that he was lending to people was a lot of money. And so, but $200 at a time adds up, and $200 that comes into your mailbox over and over and over and over again adds up to a lot of money and a lot of freedom. And he had that. And I really love what you shared with everyone here today, because I do believe that many people should consider it. It's a quick way to begin to build up and develop that cash flow. And so with that in mind, if people were to come on in, if they have any questions or anything else, if they came into the app and asked those questions, are you willing to help lead them and guide them?
Oh, yeah. Try to tag me in it, because I check the app once a day or so, and I don't want to miss it. But yeah, I'm very active in the app. And I also said Lonnie's book, the PDF is free out there. If you Google Deals on Wheels, you can find the PDF pretty easy. And it's a fantastic read. Like you said, you kind of have to adjust the numbers to today's world. Mm-hmm. But it's a great read.
Well, my 15-year-old son wants to start doing that. And so I told him at some point or another, I was going to have to get him hooked up with you.
Yeah, I'll be happy to help.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Adrian. Thank you, everyone else, for showing up. I hope that you were blessed by today's call. If you have any questions or want to continue this discussion, please just come on into the app, ask those questions. I love this, and this is a way that you sort of become the banker yourself, and you're setting up your own little bank by being the person who's doing the financing. The returns are really high. It is quick. It is easy. And so for those of you who need to start focusing on building more cash flow, I think this is one of the best ways that you can do it. And I'm grateful that Adrian was here to share his experiences with us today. So let's keep the discussion going. Have a blessed day, everyone.
Thanks for having me. Talk to you again, Nat.
Have a blessed day.